Every single one of us is a leader and could be a leader.
It started with a local coalition in our county.
Strategies you know, but stories you don't.
Data is the currency of prevention.
We want to reduce the negative, and we want to promote the positive.
Collaboration is the only way to move the prevention needle.
About connecting the research with the practitioner.
Put something out there that was kind of off the wall and create a community of prevention.
It's a passion, it's a real love to try to help make our world a little bit better, a little bit happier, small pieces at a time.
It's said an overnight success takes 16 years.
If we didn't plan for the change, but if we didn't help orchestrate it, then change is going to be upon us.
When it comes to the spiff, slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. Because the real power is in the process.
Ultimately, all of us want success in the work we're doing. We don't want to do mindless work. Proactive, participatory planning promotes positive, preventive progress.
This is the Mid-America PTTC podcast, and I'm your host, Dave Clausen. I'm the director of the Mid-America Prevention Technology Transfer Center. This is episode 34, and today we'll be talking with Heather and Janelle from the Wichita State University Community Engagement Institute. As some of you may know, they're the hosts of the Kansas PreventionTalKS podcast and members of the KPC Connections team. Through their work, they're creating positive change, connections, and building their community across the entire state of Kansas. In today's episode, we'll unpack the inspiration behind the podcast, the impacts, and how they have adapted KPC Connections for this virtual world. Heather and Janelle also share some wisdom on how we can build connection, build community, and have fun through virtual platforms. But before we get into the content, we'd like to thank our funder, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And a quick note, although funded by SAMHSA, the content of this recording does not necessarily reflect the views of SAMHSA. But without further ado, let's get into today's episode. All right, I would like to welcome Heather and Janelle to the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Dave.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Hey, all right. Now, we've gotten to know each other quite a bit over the past year working together through the PTTC, but some of our listeners might not be familiar with y'all. Would you just share with us kind of who you are and what y'all do?
Heather, I'm going to let you jump in and do that first, and then I'll share.
Are you saying age? You should go
I'm
first.
saying experience.
Okay, I'll take it. I'm Heather Winklepleck, and I actually kind of feel like a dinosaur of sorts because I have been involved in prevention in the state of Kansas for over 26 years. I've been blessed with a lot of opportunities to get to experience different approaches in prevention science, and had a lot of experiences through the state, and just really excited to get to continue to do the work and work with WSU-CEI and trying new approaches to really have an impact in our state and then those other states that we neighbor and are able to partner with.
All right, I'm going to jump in real quick. You threw out WSU-CEI.
Wichita State University, a Community Engagement Institute. That's where we're we are employed, and is one of the partners with the Kansas Prevention Collaborative. And so I guess we should have given you a little bit more background with that. But yeah, that's who we get to work with to get to do prevention in the state.
I love it. Collaboration's right in your name. It's what you do.
Yeah.
All right. So Janelle, what you got for us?
I have not been in prevention for 26 years. I think I was just trying to do the math in my head. I think I'm starting my third year in prevention, I believe. And so I got into prevention because I was already working for Wichita State Community Engagement Institute for the Behavioral Health Center. And I was more focused on mental health grants in the state. And then some things got changed around, funding got moved around, as we all know that happens, and prevention was needing some help. And so I happily went over, and now I feel like I'm still trying to learn prevention science and keep up with everybody else with prevention, but it's been a great 3 years. My main role with the prevention team is helping plan the Kansas Prevention Conference, which is annual in the fall. And so right now we are planning our third annual prevention conference for this October.
I may have submitted a program for that conference.
Awesome.
We may have attended your session last conference
Yeah.
too that you had in Kansas.
Yes. And that was my first time there to Wichita. I enjoyed it.
We'll be happy to have you back.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. So since we're here on a podcast, I gotta bring up this great podcast I was just a guest on just this last month. And I'll tell you what, it was an honor, and I had so much fun. I don't know if our listeners realize, they might not know, but it was the Kansas Prevention Talks podcast. It's got some wonderful hosts. I was hoping you guys could enlighten us about sort of the background, where that podcast came from, and what was the inspiration behind it?
Janelle, you want me to give the history?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, well, the podcast began quite purely from a need to connect all the Kansans and be able to have a platform where it would be readily accessible. We began with webinars and wanted to have them very interactive, very engaging. And what we found is that there was never the perfect time to get a lot of people to be available. And so we did a lot of research and found, because the state of Kansas is huge. It's very big. It has a lot of geographic area, and wanting to make sure that there weren't any barriers to get to persons and timing and everything along the lines, we found that podcasts would be the natural fit for us. And Janelle and I being, so savvy in podcasts recording, oh yeah, it's definitely been a very big learning experience for us, but very exciting in the sense that, we do feel as though the topics and the guests that we have really make the podcast dynamic and really useful. We also wanted to be able to have those podcasts so that they would have not a shelf life, that they could be very lively, and you could listen to it. Could be recorded in May of 2019, and you could still listen to it December 2020, and it would still be very valid and useful information. The podcast, we've had tons of volunteers and guests that share their information and their knowledge. And then there's also been the opportunity where if they have any resource, there's the opportunity for them to follow up and get that information. So it's really created a resource that's alive, and you can get it at your convenience versus where before the webinar was just this time over the noon hour, and it just wasn't as lively.
Yeah, and Dave, you were very, very kind in talking about us as hosts, because I think I can speak for both Heather and myself in saying that we feel like we are beginners with podcasts. We definitely are beginners at podcasts, but we still feel like that. We're trying to figure it out, and even kind of back in December 2019, which was a year after we started it, we sat down and looked at kind of what we did in 2019 and how we wanted to improve in 2020. So we are constantly trying to continue improving and figuring out how to hone in on our podcaster skills. And we've learned a lot from your podcast as well and your hosting abilities.
And we rely very heavily on our producer to fix us.
Well, there's a lot of things that I'm hearing right now, and it's just you're driven for continued growth. That's just your mindset. You're always seeking to learn and improve. And I love that with the inspiration, what started the podcast was a way to connect more folks from across the state. I love it because together we are stronger. And, what you all do is collaboration. And so you're working to leverage technology to increase and improve that.
Well, Dave, Janelle and I often talk too that we have a lot of resources. There's a lot of resources in the state, but they're not very useful if they're just sitting on a shelf, or if no one knows about it, or there's a barrier to them accessing the information. And right now, specifically, it seems like there's a lot of time where people listen to podcasts and can access that information at their own convenience. So, they see a topic that's interesting to them and they have 15 minutes. They can listen to that podcast there. They can pause it. They can come back to it. They know where to access it later, and they can refer it to someone else. Whereas before, you'd have packets, or you'd have, please come to this training, and drive 3 hours. It should be there. And there's, financially that's difficult. So I'm a strong believer that there's a lot of resources out there, but if people can't get them, then we're just wasting our time. So I'm really proud of the work that we're able to put forth, and I'm proud of our guests. I know a lot of them have done a lot of follow-up with our audience, and have also encouraged us to have different persons come on and visit and share the different resources or knowledge that they have. So yeah, it's super important, the connecting and recognizing, like I say, state of Kansas is huge, United States is huge, but you can get on a podcast and relate to somebody that's in California and you're hearing information from someone who's from Kansas, and it can still be relatable and gain information from that.
Absolutely. And podcasts are available on almost every single platform too. You don't have to be stuck at your computer desk to listen. You can take it with you on a good little lunchtime self-care walk.
Hey, good point.
Yes, exactly. Now, it kind of leads me to where I was wanting to go next, because y'all have been doing some great stuff when it comes to connecting, especially in this time where we're quarantined or not able to meet in person. You've got, I believe I've seen it across your very robust social media streams, but KPC Connections. Let's talk about it. What is that?
Yeah, so KVC Connections, we started back at the end of March, I believe. So at least for Kansas, we kind of things really shut down the last couple weeks of March, and so most of our partners in KPC were all working from home by April. And so KPC Connections kind of came from a little bit of a selfish place in my from my point, because I was feeling very disconnected, not only from my coworkers but from our partners and all the coalitions around the state, because we're used to seeing them probably once a quarter. We get to see each other and talk and catch up, and that wasn't happening. So I had an idea and I took it to the team, and everyone really liked it. So every Tuesday morning for 30 minutes, we have a Zoom call. And it started off where we didn't have an agenda, and people could just get on and connect with each other around the state, catch up. We shared a lot about our self-care tips, or our tips of working at home with children, or working at home with your spouse, or working at home alone. We had all different viewpoints. And so just trying to share and lift each other up and have that connection at least once a week. And so we've been doing that since the end of March, and we're continuing it for right now.
I think the real fun thing about those is they start out really lively, and it's when it hits 9:30, you look at your watch and you're just like, oh my gosh, time has just flown by. Mm-hmm. And we've had so many people that I haven't ever even met before. And so that's really exciting, that we were able to provide that platform to connect so many people, and, an area where you can have your voice heard. And I often, my favorite part too is listening to the different suggestions and just how supportive, we may get it in a chat log, or somebody's like, oh, I've been there too. So mm-hmm. it's been a lot of work. You've done a lot of work for it. So it's a great resource.
Thank you. And a couple weeks ago, I was in a certain funk, and I was like, okay, I'm getting burnt out on hosting these once a week. And so I'm so lucky to work with people I do, because then I leaned on the team and I said, let's all switch off facilitating each week. And so Heather just facilitated the one this week. We had somebody else facilitate last week. So that's been kind of nice. I still join them, but I'm not the one facilitating the conversation.
Man, there is so much wisdom in what you both were just sharing. Being intentional about creating that space for folks to just connect and be together is so important. And I love how consistent you are. You're going to be there at that scheduled time always. Folks know that I'm having a rough day. Oh, that's cool. I got KPC Connections. That something to look forward to. That consistency, I think, is so important. And lastly, the self-awareness of knowing, okay, I'm getting burnt out. I'm going to ask for help from the team, and having that core team there as well. And y'all got a lot going on. You guys are good. You are real good. I love it. I love it. I also heard that you guys tried something new when it comes to bringing your coalitions together virtually. What did that look like?
It looks like a lot of work, didn't it, Janelle?
It looked like, yeah, some Zoom fatigue maybe. We have a quarterly event that is typically in person called Prevention Works. And this is usually maybe 6 hours in person. And it's not a training, but we do use it as a time to connect with coalitions across the state, network, be able to hear about what coalitions are doing, and coalitions sharing with other coalitions, giving ideas, brainstorming. We also try to bring in speakers on different topics that are relevant and what our coalitions are wanting to hear about. And it's a really fun event every quarter that we have. And I know I always look forward to it. And I know a lot of other people look forward to it. 'Cause like I said, we enjoy seeing each other and getting to chat and catch up and everything. So we were supposed to have one in April, and it was the first week of April. And so since staying at home and quarantine and everything was still really new for us, we decided just to cancel the April one, and we didn't change it to virtual. But then we had our one scheduled for June, so we decided to try virtual. And we did not do 6 hours. We changed it to just a 2-hour Prevention Works with 30 minutes before the time started for an optional social time, so people could get on and chat with each other before the actual starting time. And then afterwards, we kept the Zoom room open for an hour for an optional virtual lunch. And so we had some people stick around after it was over to chat while everyone ate lunch at home.
Virtual lunch. I love that. I've been chatting with folks. We were trying to decide how to build a virtual conference and not lose that hallway connection, or when you're sitting out on the bench outside of the presentation room, because there's so much connection and just magic that happens then too. The virtual lunch and the social connection. I like that. I do. Great idea. And did you have something to say, Heather? I thought
Oh, no, I was just totally agreeing with you, because when you go to trainings and then you hear people talk, it's usually, you get that personal connection with someone else who's either done it or is going through the same thing you are. And lots of times in prevention, you feel like you're on an island all by yourself and no one else, can really empathize with you. But in reality, there's a lot of our partners out there that are going through the same thing. We just forget to sometimes say, hey, I need help too. So yeah, I was totally agreeing with you that afterwards, those luncheons, and you're sitting, you're talking to your peers and you're talking to others that are doing like work, and you want to replicate that. Oh, so much information is gained from that. So yeah, today, I think that really great thing that we had during our virtual lunch afterwards is, again, the 2 hours went by fast. there was a lot of information shared, and then there were some that chose to stay for the virtual lunch and ask additional follow-up questions. But some participants just needed additional, I think, face space, to reconnect on a personal level, talk through just life in general. And I think that really, it was nice to have that space. And I think even if no one would have stayed, I still think that perhaps we would have a little bit, just because I like to talk through as far as, this was good, let's repeat this, let's do this again, or, ooh, that didn't work out so well, our one breakout room, they didn't, no one said anything, that didn't happen, but just talking through and processing. So yeah, I think virtual lunches are important.
We might have to have a regional virtual lunch one of these days. See what I can do to put that together. So many good ideas every time we chat. I always learn so much. And a little bit of selfishness, but I want to keep learning. What would be one piece of advice that you would give someone when it comes to creating or building connections in this virtual world?
My one bit of advice is recognize everybody has different ways that they'd like to communicate. Some persons do not want their camera on. I know lots of times I've been in a virtual meeting and you just see their name and then you'll hear them speak, and that's how they want to connect. And accept that. That's okay with, if that's how they want to connect with the meeting, or if that's how they want to connect in general, that's fine. We'll have other opportunities today where our chat was just blowing up. People were communicating in the chat, very much connected to the conversation that was being had by, where other people had their open mic. So my one bit of advice in building the connections is recognizing that we're all individual and we have different ways that we like to communicate. We work with a lot of people that on the mic and on the camera, they like to kind of mix it up behind them. They like to have their own personal space, be very live and very dynamic, and that's fun for the group because you can change your virtual backgrounds, and that actually I think loosens the mood and keeps us connected. Because we talked about being zoomed out. You have so many meetings, and it is a lot more draining. And so having the virtual backgrounds that are so dynamic and so fun and just doing little things with that really helps. I know that Janelle has a lot of suggestions too, because she does this a lot, and she coordinated the whole works as far as the virtual part of it. So when I said it was a lot of work, Janelle shouldered a lot of that. So she probably has much better advice than I do.
Well, I do want to second the fun backgrounds. I think it's always good because this is an area that I know that I'm not great at, but being silly, openly silly. It's always great to have your silly coworkers on Zoom, because sometimes when there's just some awkward silence, nobody's sure like if they need to speak up yet. They always fill that space and really help break the ice. And so shout out to our silly coworkers in the KPC. You guys know who you are, and we appreciate you. I think my advice is more maybe on the logistics side. So I have found it really helpful to kind of assign people roles, maybe on your team, or if you're the only one facilitating this, maybe ask a couple people are going to be there, so that you have the facilitator, and then maybe ask somebody to keep an eye on the chat. And maybe that role is not just keeping an eye on the chat for questions, but also engaging the chat. Like Heather said, it's really great when the chat is just exploding with ideas and comments, even if they're not all completely on track with what is going on in the Zoom meeting. Like, again, the silliness is always good for online, because I think it helps keep people engaged when they're laughing at funny comments or laughing at somebody's background that's, random or something. So asking somebody to engage with the chat and either repeat the questions or ask other questions in the chat to keep people engaged. Because I think when you're just listening to somebody and looking at a screen, it's easy, I know for me, to see an email pop up and just trail over to read that email. And if you're not only listening and looking at the screen, but then you're also reading the chat, it takes more energy to try to put that down. Or maybe it's not so much more energy, but you're more engaged because you want to know, you don't want to miss anything in the chat box. So yeah, having people have roles during the virtual meeting. And then I'm sure I have other ideas too. I'm just not thinking of them right now. Utilizing breakout spaces is also has been really great too.
I think too, the other thing you did great, Janelle, was the break. We had one in there, but reading the room. And I know that sounds funny, reading the room, but you can read the screens, and recognizing the importance of everybody stand up, stretch for a bit, and we'll be back at this time. And then the really great thing about it was we came back, and started at the time that it said it was going to start. And if people kind of trailed in, that's fine, because they were taking care of their personal needs. But sometimes you need to look away from your screen and stand up for a second. I think of going to tons of trainings myself, and you don't want to disrupt anyone, but sometimes you do need, for your own personal self-care, you need to stand up. And today I think was really important in recognizing we needed to take a break, and allowing that to be another opportunity for us to release, but come back when it was time to finish up the work.
Yeah. One thing that I cannot take credit for, but I was on a Zoom call where they did this, and it just, again, provided that opening for some silliness and some fun. They had everybody turn off their camera, so it was all the black screen with our names, but then they asked a question, and it was either like 1, 2, or 3, I think, were the options, and you changed your name to be 1, 2, or 3 for your answer. And so you didn't know who was who because your name was changed and they couldn't see your video. So then, the chats, people are saying funny things in the chat, and nobody knows who anybody is. And so it just provided a big opening for some fun and silliness in the middle of a training.
Oh, I like it. And I love the creativity and innovation that we're all figuring out together as we learn from each other. And I would second the importance of having roles, designating folks. When we're putting together training, we call it the producer role, who's sort of managing the back end and watching the chat box, watching the participant reactions, trying to, like you said, read the room. Are folks cluing in? Are they following? Are they tracking well? Or do we need to maybe spend a little more time on the topic? It's really important. Actually, a lesson I learned, and I'm glad I learned it before yesterday, always assign at least one other person to be the co-host in a Zoom in case you get kicked out or your internet stops working. So the room doesn't close. My internet provider had a major outage that went over 3 different states with about 35 minutes left in our training.
Oh no.
Yeah, but hey, had a good team. We had our roles designated, and it really, really did help. We were just fine. We were just fine.
Technology is awesome when it works, but wow, when it doesn't.
Right.
Good thing you had that backup plan.
I know, exactly. I think, if I were to say there were 2 themes that are just continuously threaded through what y'all are doing and what we're doing, it's deeper than collaboration. You've got, connection. It's that sense of community and peer sharing. That's what y'all are doing. You're bringing people together, whether it be virtual or in person. You're building those connections, that space for community and togetherness. I think that is so important in what we do. That's how we can really have make a bigger impact. but then also y'all are leading by example when it comes to self-care and self-awareness, which is so important too. We're all helpers in this field. We care, we want to work, and we work and we work and we work, but it's so important to hit pause and take care of ourselves too. And y'all are perfect examples, great leaders leading by example. So thank you for being who you are and what you do as well. All right, one last question if you're ready for it.
Go for it.
What would you like to shout out for the listeners, or a call to action? I know you all have some great social media, any upcoming events, virtual events that are open to all. What do you want to shout out?
Oh my goodness, where do we start, Janelle?
Bring it on, all of it.
Maybe our webpage,
Mm-hmm.
The KPC Connections, www.kpcconnections.org.
Kansas Prevention Collaborative.
Thank you. See, I just have it on my bookmark and don't ever hit it. I think the really great thing about that page is everything we do, we stick up there. Mm-hmm. And then there's also an opportunity where you can connect on, and you can get like our newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes out once a month. I think it's the third Thursday of the month or Tuesday. It's talking about all the different things that we have available. 90% of our resources are free. I don't know is that in the KPC that we've charged for anything. That's not our goal. And it has also the listing of when our talks are, a listing of what the past talks that are available and how to access them. And like you said, they're on, oh my gosh, there's all different types of platforms, Spotify, iCloud, iHeartRadio or iHeart.
Yeah, iTunes, iHeartRadio.
That's our new one.
Yeah, which is our new one. Spotify. Basically anywhere that you can get podcasts, we have wormed our way onto their platform. And I believe if you search Kansas Prevention Collaborative or Prevention Talks, you should be able to find it. And Prevention Talks is all one word.
And I will put the links in the show notes, of course. And
awesome.
iHeart, that's awesome. Isn't there?
That's our newest one.
There's a pretty rigid acceptance criteria to get on there, I think, for podcasts.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Michelle took care of that. Our producer, Michelle, took care of that. So kudos to her.
Yes, definitely. That is awesome.
Wow.
Awesome.
Well, I know that's one of her goals is, again, we talk about those resources. They're not any good if people don't know where they're at and can't get a hold of them. So, all the people have different favorites. Somebody might be a huge Spotify person where somebody else might really be into Pandora. And so, there's just different outlets and making sure that we have them in all of those venues is important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I also want to shout out our Facebook page. Our coworker Patricia does a fantastic job keeping that up to date. And I know she tries to share what other coalitions and partners are doing around the state as well. And then of course our third annual Kansas Prevention Conference, which is October 15th and 16th. However, we know that we're probably going to be doing something different. We're not sure what we're doing yet. It hasn't been decided whether we'll do some type of hybrid, virtual, in-person conference, or if we'll go completely virtual. So that is still to be decided. But yeah, on our website, kansaspreventioncollaborative.org, you can also find information about the conference.
We also have Twitter. Patricia does our Twitter at Kansas Prevention. And again, all those social media outlets, she's just constantly posting and making sure that information is live and ready for anyone who would like to have it.
Yep, she's on top of that.
That's our good team.
I was just going to say, y'all have such a great team. Big things coming out of Kansas. And I'm excited to see what y'all come up with for the conference. I'm excited. I wonder if we should plan some sort of podcasting event around the conference too.
That would be awesome.
I'll
Big
get to
plans.
brainstorm. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing your wisdom today. And like I said, more importantly, thanks for being the people you are, living by example and doing the work that you do. Keep up the great work. And thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for
Thanks,
having
Dave, for
us.
having us.
That concludes this episode. Thank you all for not only taking time to listen, but your continued work to make our region safe, healthy, and drug-free. If you'd like to know what trainings we have coming up, check out our website at pttcnetwork.org. And remember, prevention is better together. And together, we are stronger.